Hello. Today we will be discussing project procurement management. Project procurement management is very important for a company. Sometimes it is said as procurement and sometimes it is said as purchasing. It is a collaboration with outside suppliers to obtain goods or services for projects. The definition of project procurement management is project procurement management is a term that describes the process of managing and optimizing a project's budget as it applies to the goods, services, and resources you will need to complete your project. Most of the time, it happens that a company is working on projects but never had to do procurement because the company is using all in-house products and services necessary for the project. For instance, if you're working in a garment company and you're given a project to design a jacket, when you plan the project, you realize that you will have to buy new fabric material for the jacket and new zippers to zip up the jacket from outside suppliers. And now for the first time for this project, the company will not be using in-house goods and services. Now your company does not carry these products and you will have to buy these things from an external supplier to finish your project. Here comes project procurement. It involves buyers of your company. And if when you need to buy something for your project, you must manage it properly. Just like other sides of business, project procurement management also follows a process. Project procurement management has three processes. The first process is plan procurement management. Second, conduct procurement. And third is control procurements. The processes of project procurement management have 5 stages. These stages are initiating and planning, selecting, contract writing, monitoring, closing, and completing. Each step has an important role in successful procurement for a business to obtain or purchase its desired goods and services from external suppliers or vendors. The first step is initiating and planning. The procurement planning is the process of deciding what to buy, when, and from what source. The product of this planning is the procurement plan. In this step, you will need to initiate the project and plan the project. This is where you determine the needs of a project and decide what you already have and what you need to buy from outside sources to finish your project. Once the company decides and lists out things that are needed to be obtained or buy from outside sources, now the company specifies a standard that the supplies will need to meet. Some companies have purchasing department and it is good to set up a meeting with them. They can guide and set up a contract for purchasing goods from outside suppliers. After deciding what to buy and when to buy and buy from which source, the company will make a procurement relationship with an outside supplier. This relationship is created based on contracts so that the services and items needed meet the requested standard and are received on time by the purchasing company. The next step of this planning is conduct procurement. Conducting procurement is where you make sure your potential customers have an opportunity to bid in fairness. It means obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. The procurement management plan provides information that guides the bid and award process. For the bid process, it identifies the various roles and responsibilities as well as procurement documents that will be used. The legal term used to indicate a legal relationship is privity. If you sign a contract with the seller, you have contract privity. However, if the seller signs a contract with the subcontractor, you have no legal privity with the subcontractor. The next step in this process is control procurements. Controlled procurement means managing procurement relationships, monitoring contract performance, and making changes and corrections in the contracts as needed. During this process, the seller must meet the procurement requirements and the buyer must perform according to the terms of the contract. This includes appropriate and timely payments and also contract change management. Thus, you can see that both the buyer and the seller will work with the procurement agreement to ensure that both parties are fulfilling their contractual commitments. Throughout the contract with comments, change requests will likely be needed. These needs to follow the change process outlined in the contract and go through the project integrated change control process. The buyer is concerned only with those changes that affect the contractual terms. If the seller is making changes that are transparent to the buyer and don't affect any contractual obligations, those changes are not documented. You should know that when closing contracts, you need to make sure all claims are resolved. You should also review the entire procurement process so you can learn from the current procurement to improve future procurements. The next step is close procurements. Closing procurement is the process of completing each project procurement. It supports the close project or phase process since it involves verification that all work and deliverables are receptacle. It also involves administrative activities such as archiving and such information for future use and updating records to reflect final results. Closed procurements address each contract applicable to the project or project phase. The next is early termination of the contract. It is a special case of procurement closure which can result from a mutual agreement of both parties, from the default of one party, or for the convenience of the buyer is provided for in the contract. The rights and responsibilities of the parties in the event of an early termination are contained in a terminations clause of the contract. However, based upon these contract terms and conditions, the buyer may have to compensate the seller for seller's preparation and for any completed and accepted work related to the terminated part of the contract. The most important thing to know about the project procurement management is that if you want to compare prices and receive several offers, make sure that the contracts you make with suppliers are correct. Define in the contract what will happen if the supplier fails to deliver. You should work with a company that matches your quality standards and ethical standards. And above all, do not improvise at last minute. Keep everyone in the loop and prepare for everything in advance. Procurement process improvements. Review the entire procurement process so you can learn from the current procurement to improve future procurements. You will be able to improve item pricing and contract items when business units buy through the same contract. Increase efficiency by reducing the number of suppliers for particular items or categories. Stronger supplier negotiation position from internal and external pricing benchmarks. Reduce processing time for purchase orders. This was Project Procurement Management by Group 12, and we are Firdoshi Devyani and myself, Amtul Noor. Until next time.